Integrated information theory and interpersonal neurobiology come from different neighborhoods of science, one from theoretical neuroscience and philosophy of mind, the other from developmental psychiatry and attachment research, but they both put the same word at the center: integration. What each theory is actually claiming. Integrated information theory, IT, Giulio Tononi. Consciousness is a certain kind of information, not information for an outside observer, but information a system generates for itself through cause-effect power among its parts. IIT starts with 5 self-evident features of experience. It exists, has structure, is specific, is unified, and has borders, and then asks what physical properties would be needed to realize them. The answer is a system whose elements are both differentiated and irreducibly linked. The amount of consciousness is quantified as phi, a quantitative measure of the amount of integrated information in a physical system, which is postulated to have an identity relationship with consciousness. More integration equals richer experience. Less integration, as in deep sleep or anesthesia, equals lower phi. Interpersonal Neurobiology, IPNB, Daniel J. Siegel. The mind is not just brain activity. IPNV defines it as a process that regulates the flow of energy and information through its neurocircuitry, which is then shared and regulated between people through engagement, connection, and communication. Health is not the absence of symptoms but the presence of integration, the process of linking parts into a functional whole. That linking happens inside the brain, left-right hemisphere. Cortex, limbic, brainstem, implicit, explicit memory, and between brains in relationships. Siegel lists 9 domains of integration, and the first is consciousness itself, differentiating the knowing from the knowns of what we are aware of. The others bilateral, vertical, interpersonal, narrative, etc., are ways that energy and information flow becomes more coherent. Where they meet, information plus integration equals mind. IIT says consciousness arises when a physical system integrates information through cause-effect relationships measured via phi. IPNB says the mind emerges when energy and information flow is integrated within and between brains. Both reject a purely computational or input-output view. They want intrinsic linkage, differentiation, and linkage. IIT's maximally irreducible conceptual structure requires parts that can make distinct differences, yet cannot be cut apart without loss. IPNB describes the same dance. Healthy development differentiates specialized circuits emotion. Reasoning, bodily regulation then links them. Siegel calls failures of this process chaos or rigidity. IIT would call them low phi. Systems thinking. Both draw on systems theory. IIT looks inward at neural feedback loops. IPNB looks outward at caregiver-infant dyads shaping neuroplasticity through cells that fire together, wire together. In IPNB, relationships literally sculpt the brain's integrative capacity early in life. Consciousness is graded, not all or nothing. IIT predicts varying phi across sleep, anesthesia, and wakefulness. IPNB predicts varying coherence across secure versus traumatized attachment histories. Both treat consciousness, well-being as a spectrum of integration. Where they diverge, and why that matters. IIT is deliberately solipsistic. A digital camera has lots of Shannon information for us, but because its photodiodes don't causally affect each other, it has no intrinsic experience. IPNB flips the emphasis. Your brain alone isn't enough for a healthy mind. You need attuned communication to develop the prefrontal limbic linkages that let you regulate emotion, empathize, and reflect. In other words, IIT asks, how much does this system integrate information for itself? IPNB asks, how do our relationships change, how well our brains can do that integrating in the first place? A useful way to hold them together. Think of IIT as describing the engine of consciousness, the irreducible cause-effect structure that must be present for any experience to exist. IPNB describes the ecology that tunes that engine over a lifetime. Seagulls claim that early caregiving shapes neural structures that regulate information flow fits neatly with IIT's prediction that disrupting feedback connectivity lowers. Fae, a child with chronic misattunement, develops stronger, faster amygdala brainstem loops and weaker prefrontal inhibitory fibers, less vertical integration, less capacity for the kind of differentiated yet unified states IIT associates with richer consciousness. Conversely, practices IPNB recommends mindfulness, coherent narrative, empathic dialogue increase precisely the kind of recurrent, differentiated connectivity that IIT says boosts integrated information. You're not raising phi on a meter at home, but you are training the brain to link previously segregated parts, which both frameworks would call more conscious, more flexible living. So they don't compete. IIT gives you a formal, bottom-up definition of what consciousness is in physical terms. IPNB gives you a developmental, top-down story of how human relationships build or break the neural integration that makes that consciousness healthy, empathic, and resilient. One explains the quantity and quality of experience. The other explains why your experience at 17 in Carlis is already shaped by every conversation you've had, and why future ones will keep reshaping it.